tied in together, I think.
Can I just interrupt you? Please can you pronounce your whole name for me?
Chikukwangu Cuxima-Zwa.
Say it again.
Chikukwangu Cuxima-Zwa.
Thank you.
Sorry, can you speak up a little bit because of that?
Okay, yeah. My presentation is, as you can see, performativity and sacred power, ritual and diaspora identity in the New World. So my work and this presentation will reflect my background. And it seems like, because I come from a Lusophone background, it seems that there is no, in the British context, there is no many Lusophone scholars and researchers. So I'm kind of bringing that perspective in a way of, what it means to be black in Britain. Because my work, it brings to the question of blackness, and there's no one way of being black in Britain. And as you will see, my work, it brings that perspective of my experience of coming from Angola and having that background and coming to Britain as a refugee and having this experience of war. So in this presentation, I've got 10 points that I'm going to be explore, talk to, but it will be, I've got 35 slides, so I'm going to try to go, quick in a way. So if you have any questions, just, ask me after the presentation. I will try to keep my slot on time. So I'm going to be looking at Angolan history. I'm going to be looking at growing up in Luanda in the 80s. I'm going to be looking at the influence of the carnival, the ritual practice. I'm going to be looking at Fela Kuti as one of the influence of my work. I'm going to be looking at Fani-Kayode. They're both Nigerian artists. Their work kind of gave grounds to my work as I arrived to Britain in the 90s, and not knowing how to position myself in this society and being a refugee. So I looked at ways of recreating a diasporic identity. And Fela Kuti and Fani-Kayode, they're the two main artists that provide that for me. I'm going to be looking at Maya Derain's work, which also influenced my work. And lately, Zora Neely Hurston works, her ethnographic work and looking at ritual practice as an African American woman. In a way also, and also because she looked at all the rituals in Jamaica and Haiti, which in a way is part of how I'm recreating my identity in new context. And finally, I'll be looking at some theoretical work in terms of the academic research, people that grounded my work in terms of theory. And I'll finalize with presenting some images of my performances, which my paper and the three performances I'm going to be showing here is my contribution to the book project. So Angola, I would say, is one of the countries in Africa that, because it's not being colonized by England, so people in the British context don't really know much about the history of Angola. But Angola is one of the countries that we suffer. We suffer, and there's a tremendous trauma in the culture because we suffer first by our brothers and sisters being taken as a slave through the Portuguese, and then in 1975 we became independent, and then straight after independence there was a war, civil war, which is the third longest civil war in Africa, after Congo and Sudan. So the three leaders, which are leaders of the three parties, political parties, there was a disagreement between them after the independence, and as a result, there was a war. So we had a war for 27 years, and because of their governance, the country were in complete disaster. So there were black people killing black people, and not understanding between leaders, and as a result of that, you know, the situation in the country wasn't as good. So Angola has one of the, I would say in the world, I think it's number one in the world where there is disabled war because of the mines and, you know, politicians want to control the resources, because Angola has a lot of wealth, a lot of natural mineral resources, and with the West as well. So we have a lot of disabled, and there's a lot of trauma in that sense. So although we had a long civil war, but in the capital, in Luanda, there was no, the war was in the provinces mainly, not in the capital. So in the capital, I grew up with this sense of culture and this sense of celebration of the traditions and the ancestors, and looking at ways of expressing the culture. So Carnival is one of the ways that the culture is being celebrated, and I didn't know I wasn't aware of the influence. I only became aware of this influence when I arrived to England, to London, because I had to reinvent my identity. So I looked back to my origins as a way of recreating myself, and Carnival became one of the aspects of giving value to our traditions that, in a way, is being suppressed and ignored by the Portuguese colonization. And through looking at these ways of cultural celebration, it is a way for me to looking at as a ways of creating my identity by value the ways of how we lived in Angola. And I look at rituals. There is although there is a very strong Christian influence to the colonization, but the traditional religion also still prevalent. And because of that, I look at ways of how we create rituals, because there is many ways of creating rituals that I witnessed as I was growing up, and I used that as a foundation for my reinvention. And we have this celebration of the Kianda, where we go to the sea, to the island, and we honor our ancestors. So this became a way for me to kind of reinvent it, and you will understand this type of influence and background when you see my work. So in looking at Angolan history, this is two academics that provide the context and an understanding of Angolan history, the war and the cultural genocide and the whole idea of the Cold War. Angola is one of the countries affected through the Cold War, and Cubans were in Angola helping the government. Russia were in Angola as well. So these books provide a strong background for those who want to understand the history. And after arriving in London, Fela Kuti became a way for me to kind of look as a reference point. But not so much in terms of looking at his music, and although his music and his political views and his rebel act and looking at revolution for the Africa in post-colonial context is important, but in relation to my work, what I found important in Fela is that as a musician, he was one of the artists who actually curate rituals. Apart from singing and performing, he actually made rituals. He honored ancestors through curating rituals. And also the fact that he, he's doing one of his performances in the shrines. And the fact that he also had dancers that they paint themselves and emphasize the whole idea of blackness and Africanness, and these ways of work of Fela Kuti is a strong ways that help me to create and restructure performances. So, and another artist that creates a performance, but in a kind of, is a photographer, Fani-Kayode, a Nigerian photographer who lived in London during the 80s. He created rituals performance in the studio, exploring the black male body and looking at objects and curating rituals and looking at ways of reconnecting with the African ancestors and the ways of celebrating the African culture through creating through religion, iconography, ways of Yoruba religion, connecting with the identity of Yoruba religion. So he kind of, his sense of creation of composition helped me to create ways of expressing my identity with African objects, with body paint, with body movements and gestures that creates reference with African identity, as well as exploring using African materials and ways of expressing rituals in the studio. So he explored this fractured and broken identity in Britain, and through photography and in a way his work is a new creation of a black experience, a reflection of him living in Nigeria during the Biafra War, and living in England and traveling to America and experiencing this diasporic transatlantic experience, which